Before this video starts, there is about a 50% chance that if you are watching this video, you are not subscribed to my channel. So if you are watching my content consistently, then please subscribe. It's free and it makes me feel better about myself. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. But with that out of the way, today I want to talk about the Eastern Conference and what team is going to come out of the East as the best team in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, what team out of the East is heading to the NBA Finals. And I think the East, more so than the West, could definitely go in a couple of different directions. The two clearest cut teams to me that I think are the biggest threats have to be the teams that you're seeing in the footage right now, which is the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks. But there are, of course, other teams outside of those two that can definitely give a real shot and have a real shot at making the NBA Finals. The two clearest cut ones being the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. I would have added the Toronto Raptors to that conversation, but this year they have been painfully bad. So I also didn't really believe in the Raptors to begin with, so I'm not going to be including them in this discussion. I don't think they're really a legit threat. And it is those four teams. The other team that is worth mentioning as well has to be the Philadelphia 76ers. I personally just believe that the spacing on the team still is not good enough around Ben Simmons and Embiid to make up for how awkward of a fit that is. And with Ben Simmons having his struggles this year, it's not exactly inspiring confidence, though Joel Embiid has been, in my opinion, the MVP thus far. So if he can continue to play at that level and the spacing just really works out, Danny Green is suddenly like a consistently good shooter. I think it's pretty clear that that's already a stretch. But if that can happen, I do think Philadelphia could win the East, but I would be pretty confident betting on the other four teams that I mentioned before them to win the East. Though, if I'm going to start eliminating teams of those four, the team that I am the least confident in out of the Eastern Conference has to be the Boston Celtics. The one thing that Boston has going for them that is going to give them an edge over where they were last year is the fact that Jaylen Brown has been phenomenal this year. I keep waiting for him to come back down to earth. Like I've said before, that everything about what Jaylen Brown has been doing screams just a hot streak. Like he's clearly taken a step as a player, but like how long is he going to shoot like 80% from mid-range? That's an exaggeration, but he has legitimately become one of the best mid-range shooters in the league, and I'm waiting for him to come back down to earth, and it still hasn't happened 15 or so games in. So Jaylen Brown just might be a very, very good player now, and that's definitely taking Boston a step higher than where they were last year. And they also have Tristan Thompson on the team, and even though he is not an amazing player, he's a real big man. And that's something they have been lacking in the past couple of years, and when they face a team that had a real big man, that could definitely be cause for concern. We saw how much Bam Adebayo fucked them up in the Eastern Conference Finals. But of these three teams who I'm most confident in, or of these four teams, Boston is the one that I am least confident in. After them, it probably has to be the Miami Heat. Now, Miami has struggled early this year, but that's really mostly due to they've had some injuries. It's really mostly that. Their lineups have been very inconsistent, and I expect this team to eventually, once they get everything established, they're going to be just fine. At the same time, I don't want to say the Heat last year were a fluke, because that sounds like way too dismissive of what they accomplished, but I don't think they're going to be going to the finals again, at least not without adding another star-level player. I don't have the strongest reasoning in the world for this. I just personally am more confident in both the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks. That being said, I would not at all be shocked if the Miami Heat found themselves with another finals appearance. I just personally think these other two teams have the talent edge to put them over the Heat. Now, it is worth mentioning that I believed that with the Bucks last year. I made the argument that hey, Miami matches up very well with the Bucks. There's no argument there. However, even though that they do have that great matchup, the talent difference should make up for it. But then it didn't. So that's definitely, like, the Heat are definitely a team that can make up for a difference in talent. I'm just not all that confident that they're going to be able to pull that off again, especially when there's a good chance they're going to have to get by not just the Bucks, but also the Nets. So it's pretty clear who my two favorites in the East right now is, and that is the Bucks and the Nets. This matchup would certainly be interesting. Since I've kind of got it down to those two, I want to talk about that hypothetical matchup the most. The thing about the Nets thus far, after the James Harden trade, is they haven't been good. And that's a cause for concern. However, I am personally of the opinion that they're going to be just fine, and after a while of getting used to each other, doing what they can to add some defense to this roster, there aren't a whole lot of options, but there are some. If they can just become a, middle of the pack, or even just like the 20th best defense in the league, that would do this team wonders. Whether or not they can actually do that, we're gonna have to wait and see. But I do believe that they can make some strides on the defensive end. The actual defensive personnel on this team is not as bad as their actual defense has been. Jeff Green is a good defender. DeAndre Jordan, while he still can't defend outside of the paint for shit, he's not horrible as a rim protector, not good, but I'd say DeAndre is an okay defensive player. And then Kevin Durant, when he wants to be, is a very good defensive player. James Harden, when he wants to be, is a pretty good defensive player. So if they just committed to locking in on that end, they could be passable. And then they also, if they really wanted to, they could move Joe Harris's contract, and maybe if Kevin Durant and Kyrie wouldn't flip out too much, DeAndre Jordan's contract, and like trade for a real, genuine player. The only issue is they're not going to have assets outside of really Joe Harris, so making that trade is easier said than done in terms of getting back equal value that will impact your defense as much as Joe Harris impacts your offense. But offense is going to be the way that this Nets team is great, because I don't know that I do know there has never been a more talented set of scorers on the same team. There's been a more talented offensive team really within the past couple of years. I would say that the 2017 Warriors were more talented offensively, and especially considering the fit there, than this team. However, I guess as a unit they were more talented just because of how good the fit was, because Klay Thompson was somebody who could, shoot the ball 10 times and be just fine. That's not really the case here. The worry is that these guys are going to tear each other's heads off, and people are going to complain about shots and all that. Though I've gotten this impression rather early on that James Harden's kind of okay not shooting the ball a lot. There's actually been people complaining about him being too passive. I believe James Harden when he kind of says he's in pursuit of just winning basketball and the numbers don't matter to him really at all. I don't know that I believe that in the past, but I think that's kind of his view set now. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, that's less clear to me, because Kevin Durant had issues in the Warrior system. Kyrie Irving, I think, really won't have too much issue. He's kind of going to get his numbers without really getting in the way of anybody. And I do think these three can get their numbers without stepping on each other's toes too much. Basically, it's just going to be everybody else on the roster is not going to shoot the ball more than like 10 shots a game from Joe Harris, and that's about it. That might even be on the higher end. But I do believe just because these three are so talented as an offensive trio, as a scoring trio, like, guarding this team is going to be downright impossible. Like, even the Bucks have a good matchup for these guys. Like, Drew Holiday on Kyrie Irving, Chris Middleton on James Harden, and Kevin Durant on, and Giannis on Kevin Durant. That's not a bad matchup. However, I don't think either of those guys are going to get locked down. And even if they do, the odds of locking down the three of them, or even really slowing down all three of them, is pretty much nothing. So if we can talk about the Bucks side of things here, the way that the Bucks beat the Nets is by simply just being both a good defensive team and a good offensive team. Meanwhile, the Nets are just really a great offensive team, but not a good defensive team. The way that the Bucks are going to win this series is by the fact that they're a two-way team and the Nets are a one-way team. The only thing is, that's not necessarily how things always work. Sometimes a team that is good on two ends of the ball can get beat by a team that is just ridiculous on one end of the ball, and I think that's kind of the position that the Nets can be in. On top of that, if we can talk about the wall defense that has held back Giannis in the past couple of years, I don't know that the defensive coaching talent is there and that the players will necessarily buy in. But this is a team that the Nets that could form somewhat of a wall for Giannis. Not to the extent of the Miami Heat or the Toronto Raptors, but they could definitely make something interesting to interrupt Giannis's flow of the offense. So what I would do in their situation is I would put Kevin Durant on Giannis. Even though Giannis is definitely a good bit stronger than Kevin Durant, Durant has that length. And again, if he puts up that effort, he can be a very good defensive player. And then if you have just DeAndre Jordan at the basket or Jeff Green waiting for him, you could even run lineups where Kevin Durant's guarding him as the 3, Jeff Green at the 4, and Blake, why did I say Blake Griffin? DeAndre Jordan at center. And like I said, DeAndre is at least good enough at being big, and he can still contest shots at the basket, not at the level that he used to be able to, but he's still not horrible at it. And that combined with like Jeff Green and Kevin Durant trying to funnel him and like interrupt him on his path to the basket and then met by DeAndre Jordan, that's not going to be the same as Jimmy Butler funneling him into Bam Adebayo or Kawhi funneling him into Ibaka or Marc Gasol, but it's not bad. And that would be the concern for this Nets team that I've seen a lot of people say, like, who is going to guard Giannis? Well, it's been shown over the past few years that the way that you slow down Giannis is not with the individual matchup, but rather the team defense, the team matchup. And I think the Nets have the personnel to not be horrible at building that wall type of defense. I don't think they're going to be good at it. I think Giannis will have a good series regardless, but I don't think Giannis is just automatically guaranteed to have an amazing series like many people have been claiming him to be. I definitely think it's well within the realm of possibility that Giannis is just okay in this series. And as for everybody else on this team, it's just going to be a matter of if they hit their shots. But if I am making a prediction for this series, who is going to win the Eastern Conference, who would win a hypothetical matchup between these two teams, I am going to pick the Milwaukee Bucks for the reason that I said earlier. This is a team that is going to play both ends of the ball, and even though I do believe the Nets have the potential to build that wall defensively, I hate saying build the wall because it makes me think of fucking Donald Trump, but the wall defense that has consistently stopped Giannis, even though I think they could do a decent version of that, Giannis, I think, is still going to have a good series rather than him having a really bad series, which is what he did against the Heat and the Raptors, which is the reason that those two teams won that series. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. One important note here with that Bucks defense, this completely slipped my mind. Drop coverage and allowing three-pointers. That's going to be problematic. If the Bucks have that kind of defense and they're going to keep letting Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving pull up from three without Brook Lopez getting out of the paint with Giannis hovering around the paint, that can be an issue because those are three of the best pull-up three-point shooters and just pull-up shooters, period, in the league. So maybe don't do that. That could be the straw that breaks the camel's back there. But hopefully they don't do that. I forgot to mention that earlier with their defense. My bad. But I do believe the difference is going to be that Giannis should have a fine series, and then the fact that Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton are good creators. It's better than just Chris Middleton as the lone creator on this team. Now there is two of them, and Giannis, I think, will do fine. And the only way that the Bucks have lost in the past 2 years was Giannis doing poorly, and I don't think he's going to do poorly against this team. I think he'll do about the same as he does in the regular season, which is to say he'll play at an MVP level. And as a result of that, and the fact that this Bucks team is going to be very good defensively, as they always are, even though that drop coverage is cause for concern, for that reason, I am picking the Bucks to beat the Nets in a potential conference finals matchup, or maybe second round matchup, depending on what the seeding ends up being. There's also a potential that the Nets just don't figure it out, and the struggles they've had this year to open with James Harden are what they're going to be from now on. But like I said, I think they're going to figure it out, and this will be our the biggest Eastern Conference battle, whether that's the conference finals or the second round, I do not know. But yeah, I do think the Milwaukee Bucks are going to win the East, and I think they would be better than every other team. That's kind of what winning the East means. But yeah, like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.